Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 116 of the Kiss Army Nation podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Pasquale Vari.
And I am Claudio Spera. Welcome to the show, everyone. And as usual, thanks a lot for your loyal support. As you will know, in our discussion panels, we try to select and identify a variety of topics, all of them obviously Kiss related, to spend a fun time and make your listening experience quite unique. On many occasions, we talked about what it means to be a collector. We have reviewed albums, explored different lineups, but this is the first time that we will concentrate on Kiss books and how they contributed to our knowledge of KISStory. For this topic, we are joined once again by Patrick Demontigny and our dear friend Eric Mehta, making his first appearance as a member of a discussion panel. Our dear friends, hope you're doing well. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Pleasure to be here.
So, Eric, being new to the show, we want you to know that we're going to start the episode with an off-the-topic question. Over the past couple of months, we have been witnessing our favorite band playing some really awesome venues in Europe as part of the End of the Road tour. Without even realizing it, we are already halfway through 2023. And the final shows are coming really quick in Canada and the US. So with, the shows coming so quickly, November and December, are you starting to sort of feel the Kiss fever and the Kiss enthusiasm surrounding the final shows? What are you planning for the end of the road? Let's start with Patrick on this one.
Do I have anything planned? Not really, because, it's the end of the road as Kiss as a touring entity, but I don't think it's the end of Kiss itself. So it doesn't, for some reason, for me, it doesn't feel like the end. Yeah, it's probably going to be the last time I'm going to see them, but, as we can tell on Kiss Online, things like that, there's still activity with all the box sets and off the soundboards, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of other stuff. So to me, it doesn't feel like the end, really.
Okay. Eric, what do you think?
Well, basically, this is a time for me actually to celebrate the legacy of the band and also the time I've spent with them going back to 1978. So I just find myself just watching a lot of vintage concerts on DVD, on TV, stuff going back to the San Francisco 1975, wow. The classic shows all the way up to the 95 shows in Tokyo I was watching yesterday with Bruce and Eric Singer. So, we've had a very long history together, me and the band. So it's really nice. It's not just about nostalgia, but it's kind of embracing your whole life with the band. And I'm rereading a lot of the books, getting reacquainted with the history again, getting pumped up, watching videos on YouTube. Like Patrick, I don't think it's the end of the band. As a matter of fact, I think we probably won't see any more touring, but we'll probably see Vegas residencies. I think we'll see a lot of vault and archive footage come out, which is something that has always been very exciting to me, because primarily even though I got into Kiss when I was 5 years old, it was always about the music for me. The music just stirred something in me that other bands didn't back then. And everything else was kind of like the icing on the cake, the makeup and the theatrics. So this will be the second time I see Kiss with my wife, and she's become a fan as well. So we're looking forward to whatever pre-show after party there is. She's been watching the shows with me. It's a cool thing. It started off as mere fandom, and it kind of becomes part of your life, and then it trickles down, and then you start listening to other bands because Kiss was influenced by other bands, and you work your way back. But like I said, it permeates your whole life, and I think once you're a fan, you're always a fan. So it's bittersweet to wrap things up, but man, what a run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Claudio, how about you?
Yeah, same here. So I guess we all shared a similar story. We all started back in the 70s, with Kiss, and it's been with us forever. So yeah, to me, I'm starting to feel like a little bit of I couldn't say a fever, but I'm quite excited, for the shows coming up. I was watching everything that these guys were doing in Europe, and the band sounds tight, and the show still, a typical Kiss show that we all love. So I can't wait. In my case, I can't wait to be there, in Montreal, and spending, the shows, seeing friends, surrounded by the KISS family. So Ottawa, then Quebec City, and Montreal, of course, and then putting the cherry on the pie with the Madison Square Garden, shows, December 1st and 2nd. I think that's going to be a nice way to put an end to the touring entity. But as Eric and Pat were saying, this is far from being the end. So there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out. And in my case, I can't wait, to get more box sets or of the soundboard, or if they decide to really open the vault, and we can start seeing some nice footage, in good resolution, in good quality. So yeah, it's a good time to be a KISS fan. I'm telling you. So how about you, Pasq?
Yes, it's the end of the road, and we all know KISS will never end, right? But at the very least, I think it's the KISS fans. They're going to keep the memory of KISS alive, right? And that's not including all the stuff that they're going to be releasing and possible one-off shows. And I've said it before, the band has afforded us so many opportunities for once-in-a-lifetime experiences. And I just feel these final shows, like you mentioned, Claudio, the final 5 shows that we're going to go to, it has a certain sense of finality to them. That part of the band, the touring part of the band, is over. We are never going to experience that band again on tour, and in my opinion, anything like it on tour. So in a sense, that is the end of something really, really special. So like everything else, I treat all my experiences like I'm living it to the fullest, like it's the last day of my life, and this is going to be no different. And yes, I do have a few special things planned for the end of the road. All I'm going to say is I'm going to organize a little pre-party at my place on the Saturday for the Montreal show, and that's all I'm saying. There's going to be other things going on. To be honest, I wanted to plan something at a local pub near the venue. I just don't have the time. Not with this podcast and with work and with our New York City shows coming up after that. I just don't have the time. Yeah, it's too much. I want to do like a pre-party and after party. I just can't do it. But I am planning something special for the pre-party at my place. More information to come in November.
There you go.
But am I feeling that fever pitch right now? To be honest, no.
Okay.
I'm on summer vacation and I'm doing so much right now. I just came back from Comic-Con, and just enjoying my summer. And I'm taking it basically one day at a time. And yes, we're seeing KISS in Europe. They're fantastic shows. It's good to see them, but they're not here yet. And I think once the reality hits that, oh my God, they're going to be here or they're here, it's going to hit me like a tidal wave. And then watch out, man, because we are going to party.
There you go. I love it. Okay, nice. So guys, let's jump into the topic, for this discussion. We find it's quite interesting. It's called KISS Narrative. And, all 4 of us have been given the homework to select the top 10 books that helped increase our knowledge of KISStory. So not an easy task, as you can imagine. So in this episode, we will discuss the top 5 books that were a common choice for us. So for the 4 of us, that it wasn't easy either. So, and it was hard because we had to leave some really cool books out of the list. If we were to discuss all 10, it's going to take forever. So I'm sure that this is gonna be worth, a second round. So we're going to get this one going. Go, Pasquale. All on you.
Now, we're going to go through each book, right? But it's in no particular order.
There you go.
Okay. So the first book we're going to tackle is a huge KISS-related book that some of us will undeniably say that it's a must-have for any KISS fan. The book we're talking about first, Kiss and Sell by Chris Lind. Now, we'll get into more specific details in the next question, but my question is, why do you consider this book so important in understanding KISStory? Let's start with Eric.
I think this book, when it came out, was a revelation because it's the first time that we got an insider's view, someone who was close to the band, who could actually remember the minutia of details, almost to the point where you wonder, how did he remember? He must have really taken excessive notes or kept diaries. Because I remember reading the book and just being impressed. He remembered what certain people were wearing at certain business meetings and stuff. So it gives you that alternative to the sex, drugs, and rock and roll perspective, because you are looking at it from a business perspective. And some of the insights I remember from the book, kind of debunking the mythology of KISS, where Paul and Gene would have us think, that no matter how bad they were doing, there was always a positive veneer. I remember actually reading in the book where they were on a flight and Paul Stanley made some sort of remark on the Creatures tour about playing the Holiday Inn reception halls on the next tour just because the attendance was so low. So really, I think the C.K. Lent book was that type of priceless type of insight as only a business person can tell you. Maybe the only other book that could have been better would have been if Bill O'Coin actually wrote a complete book. I actually spent some time with Bill actually at a bar in the context of Patrick's conventions a few years ago. And he had a lot of really brilliant stories to tell, including the story about how Cadillac, Michigan, really the helicopter just flew out of sight and just landed on the mountain and back. So it wasn't really that big of a deal. It was all about illusion. And so like I said, the C.K. Lent book for me is just an alternative to that sex, drugs, and rock and roll book that's so prevalent, especially with Motley Crue's The Dirt, where it's actually a more serious approach where you actually learn things from the business perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. Patrick?
Yeah, the reason I like this book too is for some of the reasons that Eric mentioned, but also I think it gives you an idea how the music business itself worked. I always said that for this book, you don't have to be a KISS fan to enjoy it because it gives a lot of detail and you understand how it works. And also how promoters, what was their thinking. And at some point, it was interesting when he mentioned something like, I think it might have been on the Creatures tour where promoters were saying, please ask KISS to stay home, because they were doing bad business. And you understand, it also helps you understand some of the decisions, why they made this move. As a KISS fan, sometimes you could scratch your head and say, why did they do this? But with this book, you understand a little bit more. A good example is the Crazy Nights Raw. With that book, I understood what they were thinking. They needed a hit. They wanted to be like a Bon Jovi, Def Leppard type of thing.
Yeah.
They were really shooting for that. So that's how I understood why they did this. And other things too. Like I said, it's a very, very good book for many people to read. Lots of details and a fun read as well.
Claudio?
Well, what I love about this book, actually, it's, since the get-go, as Eric was saying, when he started working with the band back in '76, the way he described, what a KISS show was, that's kind of unique. So, he was picturing, in such a way, the KISS mania that was happening at that time. And then over the years, it's interesting because he went through all the transition, what the so-called decline, of KISS in '79, '80, then the departure from for Peter, and then Ace, and he stayed with the band, in the '80s too. So it's quite interesting the level of details that he gives, and also we're going to tackle this one in the next question, but everything is so with a very interesting perspective from the business point of view. So as Patrick was saying, the whys and hows, the band were doing stuff that sometimes, if you just look at KISStory from a fan perspective, you don't understand why they were doing what they were doing. But he's a great writer, the way he explains, what was happening at that time. I think it cannot be found in any other book. So because this is not just, KISStory, but it's all the minutiae and all the details that were, behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Pasq? What do you think?
I mentioned in previous episodes how I had checked out during The Elder and checked back in during Hot in the Shade. And when I checked back in, I was just hungry for KISS information. And we're going to talk about more about this in the future. But one book I had, the first thing I've ever collected was KISS on Fire. And that's where I started getting my KISS information. And after that, it was KISStory. Now, I also started to rediscover the music. I remember loving the 80s stuff, rediscovering the 70s stuff. And for me at that time, it was rediscovering the mystique of KISS, that larger than life mystique that is this amazing band. And I remember at the time I was married and I was in the car. My wife and I were going to some show downtown. We went to the Salsa Tech. Oh my God, I was doing salsa. Let's not talk about that. We were going to the Salsa Tech, and Chris Lint comes on Show FM.
Oh, wow.
And he starts talking about the book. And I go, stop the car. We have to listen to this. So she was so upset because she wasn't a KISS fan. And we listened to the stories. I go, oh my God, this is incredible. And then after this interview, which I didn't hear the whole thing, I caved and I ended up leaving, halfway through. But I was so hungry for more from this book because now, like Patrick was saying, it's no longer about the mystique anymore. Now it's like the behind the scenes. It's the dirt, so to speak. And we're seeing how reality actually works for this band. Yeah. So that is the first and only KISS book I've actually read twice. And now doing this episode, I want to read it a third time. It was just, for me, an incredible book to read at that time.
I guess, as we were saying, I guess we all agree that this book is the perfect intersection of two different worlds, music and commerce. And of course, as we said before, all of that viewed from the perspective of a top executive within the band's business management. So, guys, is it fair to say that this is the only book that helps us understand KISStory in terms of business and dollar figures? Pat, I'm going to start with you.
I would say yes, because I try to think about the other books. They don't give that much detail, like you said, about dollars and about, okay, well, that tour was losing money and that kind of thing. We have a certain idea, when you look at KISS Alive Forever, when you see the attendances and things like that. But in terms of dollars and things like that, yeah, I think KISS and Cell is pretty much the only one, as far as I know.
Eric, what do you think?
The only one I can add to that, actually, it's not a KISS book per se, but there is a book by Larry Harris, who worked at Casablanca Records, and I think it's called In Party Every Day.
Yes, yes, sir.
So that actually goes quite a bit into the business details of Casablanca Records at the time, including KISS, but also Donna Summer and those other types of artists that were associated to Casablanca. And it's actually a fine book. I mean, it takes patience if you're not a fan of those other artists that were in Casablanca. But for KISS fans, there's a lot of great stories in there and a lot of insight. But in terms of really the KISS business end and, nuggets of information, like I remember the Chris Lent book, there was quite a bit of information about the proposed KISS World traveling attraction in 1979 and why it did not happen. Mm-hmm. As a fan, you always hear Gene talk about these elaborate marketing ploys, and then you realize that a lot of them never happen, and you don't really realize why they don't happen. But anyway, that type of insight I think was just fantastic in the C.K. Lent book. So in terms of the intersection of commerce and music, the Larry Harris one is the only other one I can think of. Mm-hmm. But like I said, that's not exclusive to KISS. That covers the entire Casablanca roster.
Cool. Pasq?
I actually heard of the book Rock and Roll All Night about Casablanca. I never actually read it. So to me, yeah. So to me, this is the only book that I know of that deals with the business aspect of the band. And I also remember, I forget where I've heard this, but I remember hearing that a lot of what was in this book was nothing but lies. I don't know. I've got no personal way of verifying that, but I see this book like Spinning Gold, right? The movie about Casablanca. I know, we all know, a lot of that stuff in that movie was wasn't factual. We know this, right? But the truth is somewhere in between the misinformation. And if you look at it as a whole, it does give you an idea of what things must have been like at Casablanca Records. And I think this book is the same thing, regardless how much of it is factual. I don't know what is and what isn't, but I get the overall idea of what must have been happening within the band during those years. And regardless of whether it's so factual or not, I love it for the idea that I get a good perspective on the business world for that band.
That's true. That's true. And it's interesting that what you guys were mentioning, Eric. Making mention of the party every day. Actually, I'm listening to it. There's an audiobook, and as I'm driving to work every day, I put it on, and that's really interesting. It gives a lot of details, not only on Kiss, Donna Summer, Parliament, and all the other artists that were managed by Casablanca. But in the case of Kiss and Sell, I have to say that this is by far the only book, for instance, that touches a very special, place in my heart, because back in 82, 83, when the band went to Brazil and they were supposed to go to Argentina, that the show was canceled, that it was a complete fiasco, actually. So this is the only book where you can find the exact information what happened. And so Chris, he spends maybe a chapter or two in the book talking about it and giving all kinds of details, as we were saying at the beginning, remembering, what each person was wearing, in the meeting rooms, and, the kind of behavior that they were having, and very factual. So as you said, Pasquale, maybe we don't know if it's the whole truth, but it makes you feel like you're there, and at least you have some kind of information that you cannot find so easily. So yeah, to me, it has a good balance of the music business and the commercial aspect of the band, what was happening. And in my case, I always thought that the band was doing really, really well in terms of sales, in terms of attendance to shows. And it's interesting when he talks about the 80s. The band was having really, really a hard time, money-wise. So they were struggling. So, and he puts, in good words, and he always keeps it professional. He doesn't go into the anecdotes that nobody cares. So to me, it goes to the point. Really, really good book. Highly recommended.
Cool. All right. So here's another favorite. What could be better than reading stories, true facts, anecdotes, and seeing amazing photos from a true member of the KISS family? We're talking about Lydia Criss. She is, without a doubt, a huge part of the story of the band and beloved by fans. So is it safe to say Sealed with a Kiss is a must-read for every KISS fan? Claudio, I'll start with you.
I think it is. To me, that's one of my faves, and then we're going to go through our list. But to me, Sealed with a Kiss is the perfect balance of graphical stuff that I love. I love seeing pictures that I've never seen before, and having stories from inside the inner circle. Peter has always been one of my favorite members, and her being his wife, and giving all the stories since the early days when they met, and going through the trip to Japan, twice with the band, and then her career as a photographer, with other bands too. So to me, it's a must-have, and I really love the approach of this book, definitely.
Okay, Patrick.
I think it's a must-read for sure. It goes without saying, because again, for the same reason Claudio was saying, it comes from like a true insider. We're talking about one of the wives of the guys, and oddly enough, I really enjoy the part before Kiss, where she talks about where he was a member of so many bands, and what the story with each and one of them. Some of them I thought were pretty funny, and also I was always fascinated with a Chelsea gig how he got that and what the story was with the split and everything like that. So for me, that is worth the price of admission alone. So that's a lot of fun. And of course, the photos and the mementos, I mean, it's just incredible. You have the impression of being with the band
Yeah.
at its peak. You know, at the the first 10 years, it goes without saying it was like Kiss, it was where it was really happening. And there's it's no contest.
Okay, Eric?
I think it's the ultimate scrapbook for fans, coming from Lydia Chris, who's been instrumental with the band since before even Kiss was formed. Like Patrick, part of my favorite part was reading the prehistory and how she supported him through all those years of struggle. The story about how he went over to England to look for gigs as well. I remember that as well. The type of stuff that you don't necessarily hear from the Gene and Paul spin on KISStory, because usually, let's face it, it's more about themselves, as it should be, because, I mean, they're the ones that have steered the ship for all those years. But yeah, I was really excited when I heard that she was writing the book, because like Claudio, actually Peter in the 70s was one of my favorite members. I actually love the 1978 solo album. I know I'm probably in the minority there, but whatever.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So yeah, just learning so much about Peter and, from someone who was there to live it with him, not only in a professional sense, but in a personal sense.
Yeah.
I think that one is definitely in my top 3 Kiss books, and probably in my top 5 music-related books of all time. It's just a priceless insight.
Beautiful. Pasq, what do you think?
Is this book a must-have? Absolutely. And here's why. I had the privilege of meeting Lydia Chris on several occasions at several expos in the US. I also invited her to my Rocky New Year's Bash here in Montreal and my Keep It Loud party tour in Quebec City. And I remember I organized a supper with Lydia Chris the night before our event. And I spent 2.5 hours at a French restaurant in Old Quebec listening to her stories. And this was the first time I actually had time to actually sit and have an actual conversation with her, not just a few words. And I was completely mesmerized. What you saw in the book is what was transpiring right in front of me in the restaurant. It was mind-blowing. And her stories are just so vivid, so interesting, but so respectful. She never talks down about anybody in any of her stories. She always talks with fondness about the early days with the band. So just take that and put that in the book, and you get Sealed with a Kiss. Wow.
What an experience must have been, eh?
Oh, you have no idea.
Oh my goodness. So we all mentioned, some specific areas which are our favorite on the book. So the book is divided in 3 for those of you who don't know or didn't see that. So it's well defined in so-called chapters. So the first one, it goes from 1966 to 1973. It's called Once Upon a Time. The second phase, it's 1974 to 79, Gods of Thunder. And the last part, it's 1980 to 2006, The Dream Never Ends. So, Pasq, what's your favorite and why?
How we're dealing with these books in this episode, like we said earlier, we're not going in any particular order. But I got to tell you, for me, this book is my absolute favorite. And I'm not sure if it's a coincidence or not, but this is one of the early Kiss books that I got. Kiss on Fire, KISStory, Kiss and Sell, this one are the first books that I started reading on Kiss. And these are the books that really have stayed with me till this very day. And there might have been hundreds of other books similar to this one, but this is the one you remember. You always remember your first kiss.
There you go.
and this is no different. It's sealed in my head, But if you're going to ask me which part I prefer, I got to be honest, it's the first part, Once Upon a Time. Okay. I like meeting, the Kiss members, anybody in the inner Kiss circle, and talk anything but Kiss. I want to talk
Yeah.
about them, get to know
Yeah.
them, because an insight in who they are is an even bigger insight into what Kiss is.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this beginning of the book does for me. It gives me such an amazing insight on who the band is through the eyes of Lydia Chris.
Interesting. I think we're going to share, the same opinion, everybody. Eric, what about you? Same thing?
For me, undeniably, the 1966 to 1973 is the favorite part. Being someone who's a musician myself, I find the struggle, that epic battle to get there, to reach success, whether it's Kiss or it's Aerosmith or whatnot, or Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath, it's almost mythical that these kids get together. They have a shared common interest for music, not just the talent, but the chemistry, the synergy happens, and then they become successful. But before that, there's the whole history as individual musicians. And that's not as well documented most of the time, because, let's face it, not many people are really that conversant with a band. I think Peter had a band called Barracuda, Chelsea and whatnot. A lot of people know Chelsea because there was an album, but Lips was another one.
Yeah.
Yes,
so, unless you have Lydia's book, you're not that well versed with that part of history. Yet it's an intrinsic part of what made Peter Peter and made him such a integral part of Kiss. Now, once success happens, whether it's 74 or 75, well, in this case it was 75 with Alive, then it's well documented by all the magazines. As Kiss fans, we collected all the magazines, so all that history is almost imprinted on our brains. So it's actually once again, the minutiae of details, the obscure stuff before the success happened that I find most fascinating.
Great. Thank you. Pat, what about you?
Yeah, pretty much 1966, 1973, because you discover, like it's a prequel in a way. You see what he was doing and how he was desperate to make it. And, because I think, when Kiss got big, they didn't, especially during the first years where they had the mystique, you never saw them without makeup. They didn't want to concentrate on that because it's details that they didn't want the fans to know to keep the mystique. But once the mystique was gone, then you could go and read that stuff and go, oh my God, that was interesting. Even, up to the point where Peter had placed the ad in the Rolling Stone magazine, and Jean Collin, she tells what was really happening. There was no party. They were, I think, painting a wall at Chris's parents, I think, or something like that, I think they were actually at Peter's place and painting a wall. That what was happening. Those little details are fun to find out. That to me makes these little details are a lot of fun. Or I think once he was supposed to go on a gig on a boat and the boat left without him and that kind of thing. Very enjoyable to read. So, you realize that it was no party before Kiss. It was really, really hard.
It was tough.
Yeah. So it's interesting to find out.
Well, I'm with you guys. You basically you said it all. To me, also the first part of the book, Once Upon a Time, it's quietly amazing. I could be, getting that book just for that section, and I could be so happy. I'm interested also in before they became stars. The real human beings. And the family, the Italian background, and all of that she goes through. How they were struggling, how they were fighting, to make it. To me, that's priceless, to have that kind of information. Then, of course, when they became famous and they did Japan and all of that, there's so many anecdotes that are really worth, reading. But, the first part, it's quite unique. It's so raw, so real.
Cool. Okay, guys, listen. There's some controversy over the writer of our next book, right? Let's forget about the person and let's think about the art, okay? So live performances are such a significant piece of the band's history. There is no other band that had such a huge impact in the rock world, thanks to their performances. This particular book now is very informative, loaded with facts and figures, and something that I believe KISS fans simply adore. I'm talking about KISS Alive Forever with our friend Gert Gooch and Jeff Seuss. This book is a true encyclopedia of all tours up until 2001. Now, what makes this book so special? And what are the details in this book that you like most? I'll start with Claudio this time.
Well, I think this is, if you want to get any details of any show in KISStory, you go to this book and you'll find it. Okay, so up until 2001 for sure. So to me, I've always used it as a let's say a source of information. In my case, I never spend the time to kind of go through it and read every single details and figures and who was the opening band and all of that. But there's some really interesting anecdotes, and to me, it goes to the facts. It goes to the numbers. So again, as I said, it's very unique in its kind. And to me, that's the only book who captures, every single concert that the band made since the beginning till 2001. To me, that's why it's a must if you want to get the right information.
Okay, Eric, how about you?
When I first got it, I thought it was a masterpiece. I actually bought 2 copies. I don't know. Because it was quite expensive for me being a young man back then at university, but I sprung for 2 copies. Being someone who always was fascinated with the idea of bootlegs, it's almost like an indispensable guide because it gives you an idea of all the gigs. It also gives you the attendance. But then when a bootleg would pop up, I'd go to the guide and I'd be like, well, what was the set list? What was the venue? This and that. And I'd confirm all these details about the bootleg. So you're that much more excited about hearing the bootleg before you actually hear it. It was a very thorough look at all the tours. I read it from cover to cover, probably more than once. I was actually very surprised by a lot of the low attendance figures throughout the years. You always get the feeling that everything was a 22,000 plus sellout. But when you actually look at the figures, even in the 70s, some of those shows that were key were 6,000 to 7,000.
Yeah.
So it kind of blows up a lot of myths. And again, the mythology of KISS in that sense, the hype. The only thing I didn't like about the book was I had to ask myself a lot of the stories, again, the details, how accurate they were. Because I actually had someone buy the book and call me shortly thereafter saying, you know what? I was at that Revenge show where he said he slammed down the sword after breathing fire and it bounced into the first few rows. And he goes, I was on the floor and that never happened. So, I mean, can we know that every story in there is absolutely 100% true? I mean, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, but it is a very entertaining book. It's a super entertaining book. I think in recent years, Julian Gill has kind of taken the torch and gone running with it and also done this documentation of the live history that's so all-encompassing.
Yeah.
And he should be commended for that because his books are amazing too. His Aerosmith book is amazing as well, following the same principle, the same format as this documentation of chronology. So yeah, I love the book. I was totally obsessed with it when it came out. The pictures, the format, the layout, just because I love Live KISS so much. Another favorite book, definitely. Great reference guide.
Patrick?
Yeah, it's one of those books that I didn't read from the beginning to end. I use it more as a reference. Like if, for instance, I want to find out more about the creature store, I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to look at the creatures chapter. And I like that they make a little intro before they do the, like each, how many people, who was the opening act, which venue, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of book where I say, oh, okay, I'm going to read about, what about the Crazy Nights tour? Okay, let's see the figures here. Where did they play and how long did the tour last? I use that approach with that book. It's not one book that I'm going to sit and read through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because I like to do that with a book that has a story to tell. I'm not saying it doesn't have a story to tell, but the way it was created and presented, I think it's more as a reference guide more than anything else. Yeah. And with a reference guide, you can, in my opinion, you can read it as you please. You don't have to read it from the beginning. There's no there's no story, or they
Yeah.
talk about the tour, so you can, whatever mood you're in to find out about which tour, you use it, and that's what I like about it.
Pasq, what about you?
Okay. Honesty 101, I never read it.
Okay.
I bought it for its collectability. I have it right back there. And it's still wrapped. I never cracked it open. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not a KISStorian. And I'm not into the fine details, the minutia. I'm just not into that. How many people were at a particular concert, and where Gene stepped on one show compared to where he stepped in another, I can care less. I can care less. There's something about keeping the mystique of keeping the fantasy alive without trying to ruin it for me by going into the minutia of everything. It's just not my thing. It's not my thing.
Yeah.
But when we were asked to make the top 10 list, yes, this was definitely on my list because it is essential to our KISStory, to our understanding of KISStory. Absolutely. It is an excellent reference book. And like Pat said, it's not something you could read from beginning to end. It's something that you go into, you look at a particular show at a particular venue, kind of thing. But I'm also with Eric. If I were to use a reference for any concert, it would be the Julian Gill books. Absolutely. And I have done that for this very show. When I'm looking up certain information that I want to refer to, because I don't want to sound like an idiot on the show. I have gone to that book. But even Julian's book, I don't read them from beginning to end. And I've only made a couple of I've only used it a couple of times for information, but again, not more than that. But it's in my library, and it's a must-have in any KISS fans' library, in my opinion.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be. I think we touched on this, as we were explaining the whys and hows and what. But so we Eric said it. So this book basically deconstructs the myths behind the band's concerts, and uncovers some of the naked truths that are even more compelling. So I guess we touched on this before, but just to reiterate, do you use it as a continuous source of information when you want to find details of a specific tour or show, or you just read it for fun, Eric? You said you read it twice. So what's your approach? So when you want to find specifics, or just for fun you go through it?
You know what? I'm not a KISStorian either, but I'm all about taking the journey with the band. You read about all this mythology and stuff and whatnot. So actually, whether it's that or it's Julian Gill's book on Aerosmith or the other books by Julian Gill, I've read them all cover to cover, and some more than once. It's just not so much knowing where Gene stepped or this or that. It's just kind of like being able to relive those glory years before the big success happened, and then through the success and the decline and the peaks and valleys. And that's what I enjoy. The most significant thing for me about the Kiss Alive Forever book was the fact that when my parents took me to see the Creatures tour in 1983, it was January 13th, I think, 1983 at the Montreal Forum, we were up in the nosebleed seats. So for years, I was convinced that Chaka Khan had opened the concert, because I know that Chaka Khan had opened some gigs. And it wasn't until I got Kurt's book that I found out it was actually the Headpins, which is a Canadian band with a female singer. Because, of course, back then you didn't have the Google or all the things and whatnot. So it wasn't Chaka Khan. It was the Headpins. But then again, as a 10-year-old Kiss fan, it could have been Tina Turner, and I wouldn't have known the difference. Just there to see Kiss, nothing against Tina Turner. God bless Tina Turner. But yeah, so I mean, the Kiss Alive Forever book, will I ever read it again cover to cover? Probably not, because there's just so much of that territory has been thread now by Julian Gill and others and whatnot. There's so many other books. But yeah, when it came out, I just loved the idea, the execution, and the concept, and I was really into it.
Good, great. Pasq?
We've often said on this show that, the great thing about Kiss are the experiences. So for me, it's remembering these amazing Kiss experiences. And memory is a funny thing. I remember believing for years that they played Charisma at the 1979 KISS show in Montreal. And people were saying, no, never played Charisma. Yes, I could see it in my head. Gene's playing Charisma. I looked at Julian Gill's book. Nope, no Charisma. So I think, like I said, I'm not a historian. I don't go through these books from beginning to end. But I think, after the end of the road, and when I'm reminiscing and I'm thinking back to some of the experiences I had with the band, I might want to know some information. I want to go back and refresh my memory. Yeah. Like, for example, when I went back to Hits, and to me, that was just an amazing show. And I remember the crowd being so vibrant, and people were telling me there was only 5,000 people. No, there was not, because I was there. There was 9,000 people. Look it up, Maybe I'm wrong. In that case, I will look it up. So all that to say, it's a nice reference to refresh my memory, because I want those experiences to be with me.
Yeah. But
I haven't pulled out that book in ages, so it depends how I feel. I might, next week say, hey, I'm gonna look at it and look it through, because also there's some cool photos. It's not a photo book per se, but it has some nice shots, and I might like to read over some of the chapters, especially with the farewell tour, especially what was happening at the time. Those kinds of things, or even the revenge tour, because the revenge tour was so short, and you find out why. Again, there were some details a little similar to Kiss and Sell, so that's kind of fun to I like those little things. So, but I haven't, like I said, I haven't looked at it in ages, so I might do it next week. Who knows?
There you go. Depends how you like it. So I in my case, I use it as a reference book, as we said before, just to consult. If I have any, if something pops up and I say, hey, what about in the 70s? Like Eric was saying at the beginning, I always thought that, every KISS show was like 20,000 people. It was like everything was like Houston or Anaheim or, Madison Square Garden. But no, it was not. So there's a lot of information there that actually we have to remember. So why we selected this book. So how does this book contribute to our knowledge of history? And I think it does. I think it does a great job, helping us to get the information on live performances. So if you want to know who was the opening act, how many people were there, what was the set list, was there anything special happening at that show? Well, you just go and check in this book. And of course, as you guys said, this was, of course, upgraded by Julian Gill and his series of books that are quite amazing too. So Kiss on Tour, and then of course all of the other books on the album focus. So yeah, definitely. So just a reference book.
Mm-hmm. So you guys noticed the pattern so far. We tackled 3 books, and all of these books are non-official releases, right? They're basically fan perspectives. So for our next book, let's look at an official release, the 1995 release of the coffee table book, KISStory. Now, do you think this book reflects the true history or the true story of the band? Patrick, I see you thinking hard, so go ahead.
It's Gene and Paul's perspective. I'm not saying it's not true or anything like that, but it's the two main guys telling the story. I take it pretty much everything is accurate. So it is a fun read, because they did mention a few things from early on that they were already having a few problems early on, which is interesting, because before that they would say, oh, things started to go sour a little bit around the Stroher, but now you find out that no, early on there were some problems. But that aside, they tell their story. It's a little bit like it reminded me of the Beatles anthology. So they tell the story themselves, but it's with a book. Very interesting read. I've read it, I think, 3 times.
Mm.
And my, interesting part is when during the Asylum era, which is one of my least favorite eras, but I think I like that they're not afraid to say what they felt, and they knew things were a little shaky at that time, and they're not afraid to say it. So for that, I think that's pretty good. My only problem with that book, the only little thing is the way it was written, especially, the guys that created rock and roll that would melt your skull. I thought that was a bit juvenile. That was my only little thing that bothered me through the book. For me, they didn't have to do writing like that. It was just a small little thing I have to say. But aside from that, the mementos and everything like that, the photos, and everything is just like amazing, no less.
Yeah, I agree. Eric?
Well, let's face it, it's a beautiful book to look at. And even though things are known to be quite expensive in the KISS world, back then in 1995, I think that the $218 price tag with shipping, I think it was, to Canada was well warranted, because it was a very quality product. Is it the true story? I don't think it's the true story at all, because honestly, I think for the true story to be told, you would have to outsource the project to someone like Ken Sharp or an outsider, a true music journalist, and then give time to Ace, Peter, Paul, Gene, so all the perspectives could come into play. Even smaller players like Vinnie Vincent, not that he's a smaller player, but Bruce Kulick, Eric Singer. So to get a really well-rounded picture of what the band was like, you'd have to interview all these key figures. But for a book like KISStory, you understand they can't do that, because at that point there was quite a bit of dysfunction in the band in terms of old members. So of course, you don't want to publish a book where this one's taking digs at this one and this one's taking digs at this one, which is something that I find is so annoying and has turned me off so much during the years, where it becomes more like a soap opera than it is really a band, where people are picking on each other, and this one said this on Eddie Trunk and this one said that. The drama I could do without. But, as a historical document of a great band and a book that you would give to someone if they said, what was this KISS thing that happened, between 1973 and 2023? I think the KISStory book would be a great start. The layout's beautiful. That picture of Paul and Gene sitting outside the studio when they were younger, I think they're on the bumper of their cars or something with the long hair. That's actually one of my favorite pictures of all time of any band. I love the book. I'm a huge fan of it.
Claudio?
Well, I think I couldn't say anything better than what Eric just said. I think the same. Does it reflect the true story? No, but it holds a special place in my heart, because that was the first book I've ever had, and I remember that it was shipped to when I was living in Buenos Aires, and getting that book, in my hands was basically a dream come true. So I basically was eating that book over and over. I don't know how many times I was reading it and going through every single photo, and those paper cuts that they were there. Even the comic cartoon that it's there. I had a blast. But I fully agree with Eric. This is the Paul and Gene's story, and we're going to go through the next books and then explain why. If you want to know the true story, you have to go to the outside. But great product to me. Being official, highly recommend it to anyone that wants to have great pictures, good text, and a lot of stories. The book to go to. You, Pasq?
Oh, for me, KISStory is my Bible. My Bible. It was the second KISS book I've ever had. Like I said earlier, I had KISS on Fire and KISStory. KISStory was the first major KISS item that I bought back in the day. 150 US plus shipping. I couldn't afford that then. I was working at summer camp and I ended up paying it off. That was a major item, and that was that was my start. KISStory was actually my start into the collecting world. And damn you, KISStory, haven't stopped since. But that is the only book I've literally read from cover to cover. I've I've read every single word in
Yes,
that book, including
right.
the ads, everything from beginning to end. I only read it once because I've got the first edition of the book with the very bad binding. So if you open it up, it just falls apart.
Oh,
It didn't, but I didn't want to take any chances. I read it once and now it's sealed and put away. I do want to buy another copy, even a really used copy, just to go through it again. But like you guys said before, it's like the A&E special. You want to get an idea of what KISS is about. This is definitely the book to read. And like you guys said as well, is it accurate? Yeah, no, whatever.
yeah,
But it's a good foundation into understanding what the band is about.
yeah.
And then that's a nice springboard into going into other things, other books, other videos, whatever, to learn more and more about that band. But if you want to start, it's definitely KISStory.
Definitely, yeah. You know, the next one, I'm really interested to get your take on this one, Eric. So you're a very artistic guy. So what is it that you like the most about this book? Is it the design, the photos, the old articles, you know, the writing, the stories? What is it that captures your attention the most?
For me, it's simply the layout, and I think everything was perfect with it. You know, they took chances by including things like the cartoon, but the cartoon worked beautifully well as well. For years, actually, they made a poster, Kiss Army Depot, of one of the panels from the cartoon, and I had that in my bedroom. So, I mean, in terms of just in terms of a document, you know, or like Pasquale said, a Bible for a band. It's a wonderful testament to whatever 1973 to 1995 at that point. And I think really it was, they often say they give fans what they want. And a lot of times that's true, but in this case, it was 100% true.
It is true.
Apart from the binding issues notwithstanding with the first printing, and my book has that issue as well, I think it was a near perfect product. And even, I remember even before getting the KISStory book, buying the Kiss My A asterisk home video, where they were actually showing them putting it together. And I was just so excited about this book. It was like, this book was like everything that year, because you just knew it was going to be that product you always wanted that would encompass the whole legacy and just take you through that priceless walk through memory lane, the nostalgia. So that's it for me. You open it and it's an explosion of memories.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. You, Pasq?
You guys know that I have a huge collection, right? If you were to ask me, if you were to ask me if you can keep one thing, if your house was on fire, and you can only take one thing out, what would it be? It would definitely be KISStory.
Oh wow!
It's the first. It's one of the. It's the first KISS item, or second, that I've ever gotten, and it was perfect in every way. I enjoyed it fully. I read it totally. I can't say anything negative about this book. It is the perfect KISS item, and my absolute holy grail of my KISS collectibles, because like Eric was saying, it also has sentimental value as well.
It does.
It helped me rediscover the band when I checked back into the into KISS world. And it's something, when I look at that book, it brings back a flood of memories of those days in the 90s, man. Nothing else could do it that powerfully.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
You, Pat?
It's the same thing, you know, when I got it, you know, especially during the 77, 78 era, I love looking at it. It brought back so many memories. And also I like the merch spreads. I think there are 2 or 3 spreads of merch. Wow, so cool to look at. So everything, and the mementos from the early days too. Photos from the European tour, private photos, all that stuff. Great. So yeah, I mean, you can never get tired of that book, ever.
You know, it feels like we're talking, and I just want to go through it right now, man. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. To me, one of the things that captured the most attention was as Eric was saying, the layout. It was so entertaining. You know, sometimes books become boring because they have the same lay out, pages through pages. In this case, you were finding small details everywhere. The wording, the all articles there, some photos. It was so amazing. Definitely. I'm almost with you, Pasquale. If I have to pick, one item from the collection, yeah, that's most likely KISStory 1. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Now, as we mentioned early in the episode, each of us were given the task of choosing 10 books. And Claudio, it came on to you to choose the top 5. And what a task that must have been for you.
It was tough, man. I'm telling you.
I could only imagine.
Yeah.
But the fifth and final book that was chosen based on our selection of 10 was Kiss Behind the Mask by David Leaf and Ken Sharp. So the band story is told in their own words. It has great photos, song-by-song commentary, unique interviews from other superstars. And that's what makes this particular book so unique from the other ones. So do you think that it's these elements in this book that makes this particular issue so powerful in our understanding of KISStory? Eric.
I love that book. To me, it's almost like, it's odd to say, but it reminds me of all the great magazines we grew up with, where there are different sections, in that it's not a linear type of progression narrative throughout the book. You have that with the history, but then you also have the song-by-song commentary. And the song-by-song commentary, for me, was amazing, because I love that kind of insight to the creative process. So I would even, when I was a kid, you'd hear that often told story about Paul Stanley putting the chords together in the flight over from Japan for Love Gun, getting there 77. So to have the opportunity to hear those stories about more obscure songs, that was just fantastic for me. And I also love the fact that Ken Sharp, let's face it, Ken Sharp is a fantastic writer. Fantastic. I know he did a lot of great work with Goldmine. This to me, that book is pure entertainment. I love everything about it. The same way KISStory is like a document, a Bible and whatnot. Kiss Behind the Mask for me is just pure fun. I love reading the style. I'm not sure when that style became popular of just, the name of the person and then the quote and then the name of the person, the quote.
Yeah.
But so many books have used that, from Walk This Way, Aerosmith by Stephen Davis, to this one and that one. So it really gives you the feeling of being there with them as you're part of the discussion, rather than just, going through a chronological history. So that's what I love about the book. And like I said, the song commentary for me was just an amazing thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Patrick?
Yeah, it's a fun book. I've only, I think, read it once, to be honest with you. Again, my approach with this one is a bit like with Kiss Alive Forever. I kind of like, okay, let's see here. I remember reading comments by these people about the first album. I remember reading what Kenny Kerner and Richie Wise were saying about the first album, or Destroyer. Even the comments by Peter and Ace and everyone else made it interesting. And also, some photos are really cool. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, there are some photos of Ace in his pre-Kiss band.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That was interesting too. Some little odds and ends there that made it worthwhile for me. Very nice book. A lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Claudio?
I love it. To me, that's my top 2. This is, again, Ken Sharp, to me, Nothing to Lose and Behind the Mask. Those are my top 10, top 2 books there ever. And I think I've read it maybe 3 times or 4 times. I always go back to that book all the time, when I listen, I'm listening to a song on something, and then I just go and check, what Paul had to say on that specific song, what was happening in the album. And I found that that's to me, maybe the only book where the members of the band, they say the real thing about what was happening, not only musically, but within the band. So I cannot find the typical marketing pitch, from Paul and Gene saying, the same thing over and over again. That, if they had to give 1 star to a specific song or to a specific album, they do it right away. And also, having the insight from other musicians and other people in the industry. To me, that's an added value that it's amazing. I can only find it in this book. To me, it's a must read, very well written, as Eric was saying. Yeah, definitely one of my faves.
Mm-hmm.
You, Pasq?
I love this book because imagine being a Kiss fan, sitting down with Paul and Gene and talking Kiss, and then putting it on paper.
Yeah,
that's what this book is. It's what an incredible fantasy, you know. And in a sense, this book is so honest because it's very similar to teaching one of my ethics classes. We come up with a topic, in this case, it's Kiss. And what's your opinion? What's your opinion? What do you think? What do you think? There's no such thing as a wrong opinion. We are having a discussion on this particular topic. So my favorite part of this book is when you had all these different people commenting on different aspects of the band. That, to me, was the most fascinating part of this book because it came from the heart. It came from passionate fans. And based on people's experiences, whether it was good or bad. You know, to me, that was an amazing read. And, you know, this is not one of those books I take seriously. It was a really fun read.
It's a fun read.
Yeah,
it's a fun read.
I've only read it once. I do want to read it again because it was a blast. It truly was.
It is a fun read.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, these guys, you know, both Ken Sharp and David Leaf, you know, they were given full access, you know, to unprecedented access to the band and the inner circle. So do you believe that a book written by a fan has a distinctive flavor compared to material that the band officially released? Well, that's a tough one, but you know, that's a nice way to kind of wrap up the episode. So how you compare something written by a fan compared to the band, and in that aspect, is there any book that hasn't been released that you would like to be released or that you would like to read? Patrick, 2 questions in one.
Yeah, a fan will always have that one thing that the band can't have, and that is the passion for the band. I'm not saying the band doesn't have the passion itself, but as a fan, we have the admiration and we're in awe that the band can't have. So therefore, I think, you know, the old saying, made by the fans for the fans, I like that approach. So sometimes it has that passionate spark.
Yeah.
So I think, that, you know, a fan, but supervised by Gene and Paul. I mean, we've seen that with, I think, what was it called? The hottest brand in the land.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a good approach. With, you know, the fan created it. Gene and Paul were like, they okayed it, but it's so amazing. As far as the Ultimate Kiss book, I think if one fan is lucky enough to have one meeting with Ace, one meeting with Peter, one meeting with Paul, and one meeting with Gene, and blend it together and write, you know, their version of KISStory, that could be a dream book.
Awesome.
Fairy tale, but it can happen.
Maybe, who knows? Pasq, what's your take on this one?
All right, guys, a heads up. After we're done with this question, I want to know everybody's top 10 picks.
Sure.
And here's why I want to know. I want to know if anybody chose any of the biographies from Paul, Gene, Peter, and Ace.
Okay.
I want to know. I'll tell you right now, I didn't. Because to me, that is not I don't want to say a good source of information, but I want to look elsewhere for a source of information because they're coming with a particular personal bias. They have something to lose. They have a brand to promote. It's self-serving. But when a fan does something, Patrick, like you said, it comes from the heart. It's passionate. It's real. And that's what I would tend to believe. And I had, the pleasure of meeting Ken Sharp. And this man is a man of integrity. This is a real Kiss fan, a true Kiss fan, a passionate Kiss fan. So I would really believe what he's saying in his books because he's living our fantasy, sitting in front of the band, talking Kiss, and then putting it on paper. That's just incredible. Now, to your second question, is there any book that hasn't been written yet? I don't know. I've read so many. I've got so many in my KISS library. Some of them I haven't read yet. What more can they possibly say? We're seeing a lot of books now come out about fan experiences.
Yeah.
And I think there are millions of stories to be told, each of them interesting because it comes from a different perspective. So I think in terms of learning historic facts about the band, again, for me, that only goes so far. But fan stories, to me, I can never get bored of.
Eric?
Yeah, I believe that a book written by a fan has a distinctive flavor. I think the passion is a lot more evident. And I think also that the perspective is a lot more clear. I think a fine example is the incredible amount of passion that Alain Belisha puts in his books recently. I mean, his books are amazing. And I mean, he's so prolific as well in his writings. They're almost like a love letter to the band and to the band's past. So, yeah, I mean, the band, no matter what Paul and Gene are going to do, it's going to be self-congratulatory. That's kind of how they are. Maybe, hype and stuff like that. That's always been part of the game with them. But yeah, there's a lot of fan stories that have been being told, and a lot of them are fascinating. I actually forgot the name, but there was one that was written by a fan from Vancouver that was published at the beginning of this year. And it was about his experiences growing up as a KISS fan in Vancouver, a Canadian KISS fan. There's another fan book that I haven't read yet. It's called Kiss My Black ASS. It's about the experience of growing up as a Black KISS fan, which honestly, I don't even know if that was atypical because everyone loved KISS in the 70s. I was just watching the bootleg for Texas 1976. And if you look at the crowd, it was completely multicultural even back then. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's a passion that'll come through a fan project that I think, once you get through the washing machine of the hype and the PR spin, you won't get from an official product. So, yeah, but I mean, we're lucky in that way because there's so many official products and there's so many unofficial books that, you just read them all and you extract from them what you want. And I mean, we're certainly not underserved when it comes to KISS literature. There's a ton of KISS literature out there.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true. I pretty much prefer, fan-made stuff than the official. But although, we just said that, KISStory is one of our main items in our collection. But, having said that, I think there's something into it, when it's written by a fan, and it can transpire through passion or through experiences or through, friendship or something that it cannot be found on an official release. So to me, that's really distinctive. And in the case of the ultimate book that I would like to read, I would really like to read, something related to KISS in Canada. Canada has been so huge, as part of KISStory since the early days, when the guys were touring in 74. Some amazing shows in London, Ontario, with Rush, opening for them. So it would be so cool for me because I just landed in Canada in 2004, and there's so much stuff that I don't know about, the story of the band in this beautiful country. So that would be awesome, just to consolidate and being able to put everything together in one single book, KISS in Canada. That would be a dream for me.
Yeah, good idea. Good idea. All right, guys. So instead of our typical closing comments, to close the show, I want to hear your top 10.
There you go.
I want to hear your top 10. So if you don't mind, I'm going to start.
Of course.
All right. So, and I actually put these in order from my first to the last. But in a sense, it's not necessarily my favorite to the least favorite. It's just, I feel that these 10 books tells the whole story.
Okay.
So number 1, Sealed with a Kiss. Number 2, Kiss and Sell. Number 3, Shout It Out Loud with James Campion. Now, here's the book about minutia. And here's a book I read from cover to cover because Destroyer is what got me into KISS. And I want to learn more about that amazing album that got me into this incredible band that afforded me so many opportunities for an amazing life. Absolutely. This was also mentioned, Kiss on Tour, Alan Belicha, an incredible book.
Oh, yeah.
An incredible book. Kiss on Tour with Julian Gill. Kiss 7780 with Lynn Goldsmith.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool. It's a photo retrospective of the band and the fans. It's history through photos.
Yeah.
You know, that was a good one. Kiss destroys Madison Square Garden. Javier Ruda. You know, seeing the Kiss experience from somebody in another country.
In Spain.
You know,
yeah.
exactly. That's amazing. I want to see more of that. Too bad some of these books are in a different language, because I would love to hear their stories.
Mm-hmm.
Kiss Forever, the Kiss Years. I love that book with Barry Levine. Again, yeah, it's a book about, you know, all the pictures that he's taken of the band. But you look at those pictures, man. This is iconic. Kiss. You want to understand what the mystique is for the band, because they're such a visual band. This is the book to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric, I'm not sure if this is the book you were referring to. I Stole Your Love, Ron Williams.
Yes.
That's the one, right? We had him on the show a while ago.
Yep.
Great book, very simple, but an amazing story of his history, of his life. And here is a passionate Kiss fan that has nothing to gain except a love for the band. So I feel that these 10 books put together tells the story.
Yeah. Good. Nicely said. Eric, what about you?
Okay, well, I know Pasquale mentioned earlier Kiss on Fire, but actually one of my favorite books growing up was Kiss Still on Fire. Now, Kiss on Fire was the book that came before that one. It had a black cover with a Lick It Up era shot of Paul with his BC Rich, the leopard print. Kiss Still on Fire came out around 1987-88. It was written by Anders Holmes and let me check. Anders Holmes and a co-author. Now, the thing that was, his name was Dave Thomas, the co-author. The thing that was unique about this book is you could find it at Discus Record Shop. Because back in 87, 88, you didn't have Amazon, you didn't have Chapters. So I went in there, and I remember it was $29 back then in 1988, which seemed like a fortune. But this book was published in Scandinavia, I believe it was. And it was magazine format, but thick with a nice cover, full of pictures I'd never seen before. There was actually a discography at the end that included bootlegs that actually blew my mind. Just a beautiful, beautiful book. It was the first time that I'd actually read in book format anything about the history of the band. So as a 14-year-old, I was just completely jazzed to have this book. At number 2, Kiss and Sell by C.K. Lent. We just discussed that at length. More recently, I read Take It Off, Kiss Truly Unmasked by Greg Prato. Now, prior to writing this book, he actually also wrote a biography of Eric Carr, which is quite nicely done and very informative. It featured a lot of contributions by Carrie Stevens, Christina Kulik, Bruce Kulik, good book. But what I like about Take It Off is the fact that, for me, the 80s were almost as mystified as the 70s were, for the simple fact that Kiss didn't come to Montreal between 84 and 90 when they came back for the Hot in the Shade tour. Yeah. So that's almost like as magical a period or as much shrouded in mystery as it was in the 70s when they had the makeup on for me. So to discover all this information about a period that gets glossed over a lot, that was just really cool. After that, I put down Kiss Alive Forever, of course. I actually really enjoyed Gene, Ace, Peter, and Paul by Julian Gill. Yeah. I love the solo albums because I became a fan around the time of the solo albums. So that in-depth look into the creative process and all 4 of them branching out into their own studios, into their own worlds to create these different finished products. I found that fascinating. Sealed with a Kiss, of course. Nothing to Lose. That's a great book as well. I chose that one. I also chose Odyssey, which is the exploration
The Elder, yeah.
that Julian Gill did. Again, The Elder is a controversial album, but I absolutely love it. like a lot of people have said, it might not have been the finest Kiss album, but I just find it a great underrated record. And finally, it's interesting that Pasquale mentioned this because I did choose Paul Stanley's autobiography for the simple fact I met Paul in 1995. I spent some time with him. I basically had idolized Paul from the time I saw him on Kiss Meets the Phantom in 1978 and then on 321 Contact in 79. He was super nice. Couldn't have been nicer when I met him in 1995. So for all the flaws in that book, it just gives me a nice picture of someone that I've grown up with and always looked up to. And I got the same feeling when I read Joe Perry's autobiography as well.
Okay.
Joe is very much a down to earth type person, very not rock starish. So it gave me a keener insight into his life as well. So if I had to actually choose two of my favorite autobiographies, it would be Paul Stanley and Joe Perry. So that's basically the Kiss that meant so much to me.
So that's the first one from Paul, right?
The first one from Paul, but to be perfectly honest, I really like the second one too.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Pat, what about you? Your top 10?
Okay. Yeah, my first one, Kiss and Sell, for the reasons we talked about earlier on. Sealed with a Kiss, my second favorite one, of course. An absolute must. My third one, KISStory. Nothing to Lose, which I think was very detailed, and there's lots of work that went into that one. Behind the Mask is interesting as well. On tour 1973-83 by Alain, made by fans for the fans, as I had mentioned earlier. You can't ask for anything better, so that's a true must. Alive Forever, that's another good one. Kiss and Tell by Gordon. I know that's a very controversial book, but if you take it with a grain of salt and just read it for the entertainment purpose, it just flows. It's, Kiss fans need to stop being so sensitive. It's just read it for what it is, enjoy it. You don't like it, throw it away, and that's it. But I thought it was entertaining. The ultimate Kiss fanzine phenomenon, because it reminded back in the day when I helped with a fanzine cider. It brought back memories, and again, it showed the passion of Kiss fans. And it's officially released, an official Kiss product. And the last one, Kiss and Tell More, like an additional book by Gordon. Again, entertaining. You take it for what it is, and fun to read. That's it. It should be fun. That's the part people forget.
Yeah, it should be fun. Okay, so here's my 10, and let's remind everybody. This was the idea was which are the books that we think contribute the most, to our knowledge of KISStory. So to me, I'm gonna go with from Ken the first two, Nothing to Lose and Behind the Mask. Then I have Kiss and Sell from Lent. Shout It Out Loud. I concur with Pask. The amount of detail and the approach that James gave to Shout It Out Loud on the making of Destroyer, it's unbelievable. Sealed with a Kiss from Lydia, KISStory 1, Alive Forever from Karguch, Kiss on Tour from Julian, Out on the Streets from J.R. Smalling. The guys, the roadies, that's it's a fun book to read. There's even the drawings of what they were thinking of doing for the stages and all of that. It's a fun read because it's from the perspective of the guys who were actually taking care of the band, so not to be killed when they were touring everywhere in the US. It's a really fun read. And the last one is going to be Kiss the Early Years from Warren Abbott. Also, very a photo book basically. But if you go through it, it goes chronologically, and you can tell that's the story of the band in images. So really cool.
Nice. I just want to end by saying two things. Number one, I said Kiss on Fire.
Yes, you said Kiss on Fire.
No, what's the other one? Still Kiss?
Okay.
It's the same one that Eric said. Yeah, I think.
Okay, Kiss on Fire, I think, came out around 1984. It was really hard to get. You couldn't widely get. I actually bought a copy at a convention Then 88, Kiss Still on Fire came. And
That's the one I have.
I
Right.
knew you had that one.
Yeah, that's the one I have.
Pull it out, Eric. You have it there, I guess. No.
Well, I don't have it with me, but I do have a screenshot of it. So just give me 1 second and I'll show you.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll ring a bell right away because I think every Kiss fan went to Discus and picked this one up. So that's what it looked like.
Yeah, right.
That's right. Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
That's the one I have.
Yeah.
So that for me was the first time that I read the Kiss story as a narrative. I mean, I think the only other book that came out before then that told the story, there were a couple in paperback format. I think one was by Swenson in the 70s.
Yeah.
And then there was a really nice one around 1980 called Kiss the Real Story by Peggy Tamarkin.
Right.
Really nice pictures too. But this Still on Fire, widely available at Discus. I was at Discus all my whole life when I was a kid. I spent my life there. So that was one when I saw that. I had to have that. And man, did I read that. That was like my first attempt at KISStory, learning the KISStory. It was like a dream come true when I got that book.
Mm-hmm. And second thing I want to say, and I just noticed this myself, with everything I said about KISStory, did you notice it wasn't on my top 10?
Aha.
What the heck? What the heck? I'm gonna argue the following: that you take my top 10 and put all of that into KISStory. And that's what KISStory is. And I'm sticking to it.
I love it.
Also, I just want to note that I thought we were doing more with narrative informational books. So I didn't do photo books at all.
Right.
But there's some great ones out there from Warring Abbott to Barry
That's
Levine
right.
to
Exactly.
Lynn Goldsmith. There's a new one actually coming out, Portraits of Kiss, that's coming from Rufus Publications in the UK. I actually have that on pre-order. I think
There's one coming out. There's one coming out soon from Martin Popov. That
Martin Popoff,
that's gonna be awesome too.
Can't wait for that.
he does fantastic books.
Yeah.
He does fantastic books. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I said at the beginning that this is worth round two, man. We can do photo books and we can talk so much more about literature on Kiss. It's amazing. It's endless.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, anytime you want me back on, just ask. I'll be there. This was a lot of fun, and it's great to see you guys.
No, thank you so much for being on the show, Eric. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Pat.
Patrick.
As usual, this is amazing. Spending this time with you guys and talking Kiss in this particular episode. Talking about books, something that we hadn't done before. It was so much fun. And thank you for your time. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you for having me. Great time.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
Thank you, guys. Kiss Army, what is your opinion on books that really contributed to your knowledge of KISStory? Tell us in the comment section. So if you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please send them to talktome@kissarmynationpodcast.com. Until the next time, remember, never stop rocking. Take care, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe on YouTube or follow us on Spotify, Automatic, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to make yourself heard. Leave us a comment on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. See you all soon, Kiss Army.